can't believe you would do this. I need some space.
You want freedom? You've got it.
The Instagram post glowed on my phone screen at 2:47 a.m., casting blue light across my empty bedroom. Best vacation with the girls, Zara Blessed, Shark's Paradise, Sarah Girls Trip. Jessica's caption read, accompanied by a photo of cocktails on a sunset-lit balcony. But it wasn't the drinks that caught my attention. It was the man's Rolex Submariner gleaming on the nightstand in the background. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Ben Harper, and I've been practicing law for 8 years. I know evidence when I see it. And right now, I was staring at evidence that my wife of 6 years was a lying, cheating piece of work. How many girls wear a $40,000 men's watch these days? I muttered to the darkness. Maybe it's a new fashion trend I missed. Jessica was supposed to be in Miami with her college girlfriends, Kimberly and Sarah, celebrating her promotion at the marketing agency. She'd been planning this trip for months, gushing about spa treatments and beach time. What she hadn't mentioned was the masculine jewelry collection apparently accompanying their girls' retreat. I scrolled through more photos. Jessica in a bikini by the pool, Jessica laughing over dinner, Jessica raising a champagne glass in what looked like a hotel suite, and in 3 separate shots, glimpses of male accessories, a leather wallet on a chair, expensive cologne bottles on a bathroom counter, and that damn watch. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Miss you, baby. Having so much fun with the girls. Love you. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, looks like an amazing trip. That hotel suite is gorgeous. Her response came quickly. Thanks. Kim's dad got us an upgrade. You know how she is with connections. Kimberly's dad had passed away 3 years ago. I set the phone aside and walked to my home office, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floors of our suburban Connecticut house. The house we'd bought together 2 years ago, with a white picket fence and attached garage, the finished basement where I kept my law books and bourbon collection. The house where I'd apparently been living a lie. I fired up my laptop and started digging. The hotel's website showed their suite rates, $800 a night. Kimberly worked as a substitute teacher and lived in a studio apartment. Sarah was a nurse with 2 kids and a mountain of student debt. Neither of them had suite money, and they certainly didn't have late fathers pulling strings. But I knew someone who did have that kind of cash. Ethan Cole, Jessica's business contact from the construction industry, the guy who'd been showing up at more and more of our dinner conversations lately. Ethan thinks we should renovate the kitchen. Ethan knows this great restaurant downtown. Ethan says the market's perfect for flipping houses. Ethan with his classic Mustang and his downtown loft. Ethan who'd been divorced twice and had a reputation around town for chasing married women. Ethan who wore expensive watches and cologne. I pulled up the airline's website and checked flight availability to Miami. There was a 6 a.m. departure that would get me there by noon. Jessica wasn't expecting me until she returned Sunday night. That gave me 2 days to confirm what I already knew in my gut. I booked the flight and a room at the same hotel where my wife was apparently enjoying her girls' trip. The Fontaine Resort, with its infinity pools and ocean views and suites that cost more than most people's monthly rent. As I packed a small bag, my hands shook slightly. Not from fear, but from something else entirely. Something that felt like anticipation. Looks like fun, Jess, I said to the empty bedroom. But it's about to get even more fun. I'd built my legal career on preparation and patience. I never walked into a courtroom without knowing exactly how the case would unfold, and I never, ever made a move without having 3 backup plans. Jessica was about to learn that betraying a lawyer was the worst mistake of her life. The 4 a.m. alarm felt like a formality since I hadn't slept anyway. I showered, dressed in casual clothes that wouldn't look out of place at a resort, and drove to Bradley International Airport through the pre-dawn darkness. During the flight, I reviewed what I knew about Ethan Cole. 37 years old, inherited his father's construction business, expanded it into high-end commercial development. Divorced from wife number 1 because of an affair with wife number 2. Divorced from wife number 2 because of affairs with multiple other women, including at least 2 who were married at the time. Jessica knew all of this. We'd talked about Ethan's reputation at neighborhood barbecues, shaking our heads at his inability to keep his hands to himself. What kind of woman falls for a guy like that? Jessica had said just last summer, watching Ethan chat up someone's wife at the community pool. Apparently the kind of woman I'd married. The plane touched down in Miami at 11:43 a.m. By 1 p.m., I was checked into a standard room at the Fontaine Resort. 3 floors below the suite where my wife was supposedly bonding with her girlfriends. I spent an hour by the pool, wearing sunglasses and reading a legal thriller, watching for familiar faces. At 2:30, I spotted them. Jessica emerged from the resort spa wearing a white sundress I'd never seen before, laughing at something the man beside her had said, the man who definitely wasn't Kimberly or Sarah, the man who was definitely Ethan Cole. They walked hand in hand toward the pool bar, Jessica's head tilted against his shoulder in a gesture of intimacy that made my stomach clench, not from heartbreak, but from rage. I watched them order drinks, watched Ethan's hand rest possessively on Jessica's lower back, watched my wife of 6 years act like a woman who'd never heard the word marriage before. They found a table in the shade, close enough that I could hear fragments of their conversation if I moved to the bar. "Told Ben I'd be back Sunday night," Jessica was saying, stirring her mojito with a little pink umbrella. "That gives us 2 more days," Ethan replied, his voice carrying that smooth confidence that had probably worked on wives number 1 and 2. "Think you can handle 2 more days of this kind of torture?" Jessica laughed, the sound bright and carefree in a way I hadn't heard in months. "I think I'll manage somehow." "Good, because I've got plans for you tonight that don't involve room service." "Ethan Cole, you are terrible." "That's what you said last night, right before you begged me to be more terrible." My grip tightened on my book, but I kept my expression neutral. Just another resort guest enjoying a tropical afternoon, not a husband listening to his wife discuss her extramarital adventures. They finished their drinks and headed back toward the resort's interior, probably returning to that $800 suite for an afternoon session. I gave them a 10-minute head start, then followed. The resort's main bar was elegant and dimly lit, all dark wood and brass fixtures. I found a corner table with a clear view of the entrance and ordered a scotch. At 7 p.m., Jessica and Ethan appeared for dinner. Jessica wore a black cocktail dress that hugged her curves, her blonde hair swept up in an elegant twist. She looked stunning. She looked happy. She looked like a woman celebrating something special with someone she cared about. She looked like everything she'd never been with me, at least not in the past 2 years. They were seated at a table for 2 near the windows overlooking the ocean. I was 3 tables away, partially hidden by a decorative palm tree, close enough to observe, but far enough to avoid detection. The waiter brought them champagne without being asked, suggesting this wasn't their first evening at the restaurant. Jessica raised her glass in a toast, and even from a distance, I could see the radiant smile on her face. "To new beginnings," I heard her say. Ethan clinked his glass against hers. "To getting what we deserve." They drank, and Jessica leaned across the table to kiss him. Not a quick peck, but a lingering, passionate kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. I finished my scotch and signaled for another. The alcohol burned, but not as much as the realization that my marriage had been over for months, and I'd been too stupid to see it. But that was about to change. I waited until they were deep in conversation over their appetizers, then stood and walked directly to their table. "Fancy meeting you here," I said, pulling out the empty chair at the table next to theirs. "Mind if I join you?" The color drained from Jessica's face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her champagne glass froze halfway to her lips, and for a moment, the only sound was the gentle jazz music playing through the restaurant's speakers. Ethan recovered first, that practiced smile sliding across his face like oil on water. "Ben Harper, right? Jessica's mentioned you. What a coincidence running into you here." "Coincidence," I repeated, settling into my chair and signaling the waiter. "That's one word for it. Scotch, neat," I told the server, then turned back to the happy couple. "So, Ethan, how are you enjoying the girls' trip?" Jessica finally found her voice. "Ben, what are you doing here? How did you... this is such a surprise." "I bet it is." I leaned back in my chair, completely relaxed. "You know how it is, Jess. I saw your Instagram posts and thought, that hotel looks amazing. Maybe I should surprise my wife with a romantic weekend." Imagine my shock when I called the front desk and they told me Mrs. Harper was already registered, in the penthouse suite, with a male companion. Ethan's smile faltered slightly. "Look, Ben, I think there might be some confusion here." "Oh, I'm not confused at all." I pulled out my phone and scrolled to Jessica's Instagram post. "Nice watch, by the way. Rolex Submariner, right? I've been thinking about getting one myself. Jessica, didn't you tell me Ethan wore a Submariner?" Jessica's hands were shaking now. She set down her champagne glass before she could drop it. "Ben, please, let me explain." "Explain what? How Kimberly's late father got you an upgrade to an $800 suite? Or maybe you could explain why your girls' trip seems to involve a lot of expensive men's accessories?" The tables around us were starting to take notice. A middle-aged couple to our left had stopped eating to listen. The waiter hovering near the bar kept glancing our way. Ethan leaned forward, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a threatening whisper. "Harper, you're making a scene. Why don't you calm down and we can discuss this like adults?" I laughed, loud enough that several more diners turned to look. Adults? That's rich, coming from a guy who's built his entire reputation on screwing other men's wives. Tell me, Ethan, what number is Jessica? Wife 3? 4? Do you keep count, or do they all blur together after a while? That's enough. Ethan started to stand, but I held up a hand. Sit down, Romeo. We're just getting started. I turned to Jessica, who looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. So, honey, how long has this been going on? And please don't insult my intelligence by claiming this is the first time. Nobody books an $800 suite for a first date. Jessica's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Finally, she managed, "Ben, you don't understand. Things between us haven't been good for so long, and Ethan and I, we just connected and—" "Connected," I interrupted. "Is that what we're calling it? How wonderfully romantic. And here I thought you were just having an affair with a serial cheater who's going to dump you the second he gets bored." Ethan's face was turning red. "You son of a jerk, you can't talk to her like that." "Actually, I can. She's my wife. Or at least she was until about 5 minutes ago." I stood up, dropping a 20 on the table. "Dinner's on me, kids. Consider it a divorce present." I started to walk away, then turned back. "Oh, and Ethan, you might want to ask Jessica about the life insurance policy she took out on me last month. Just a thought." That last part was a lie, but the look of panic that flashed across Jessica's face told me I'd hit close to something. Maybe not life insurance, but something she didn't want Ethan to know about. I walked out of the restaurant with my head high, leaving behind the whispered conversations and shocked stares. In the elevator, I allowed myself a small smile. Round 1 to me. Back in my room, I called my law partner, David Chen, despite the late hour. "Ben, what's wrong? You sound weird." "I'm in Miami, and I just caught Jessica cheating on me with Ethan Cole." A pause. "Jesus, are you okay?" "I'm fantastic. I need you to do me a few favors first thing Monday morning." "Name it." "Change all the passwords on our joint accounts. I transfer half the money to my personal account, freeze the other half, call our mortgage company and remove Jessica's name from the automatic payment system, and get me the name of the best divorce attorney in Connecticut who isn't afraid of a fight. Ben, slow down. Don't do anything you'll regret." "The only thing I regret is not seeing this coming sooner. Oh, and David, run a credit check on Jessica. Something tells me there are a few surprises waiting for me." After I hung up, I sat on the balcony of my hotel room, looking out at the same ocean view Jessica was probably enjoying 3 floors above me. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Ben, please call me. We need to talk." I deleted the message without responding. An hour later, another text. "I know you're angry, but this isn't what you think." Deleted. At 11 p.m. "Ben, please, I love you. This was a mistake." I finally replied, "The only mistake was mine. Enjoy the rest of your vacation, Jess. It's going to be your last one for a while." My phone rang immediately. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to Jessica's tearful message about how sorry she was, how it didn't mean anything, how she wanted to work things out. I saved the voicemail. Everything was evidence now. The next morning, I checked out early and caught a flight back to Connecticut. I had work to do, and it was the kind of work that required privacy and careful planning. Jessica didn't know it yet, but she'd just declared war on the wrong man. By the time I landed at Bradley International, David had already started the financial moves. Our joint checking account was frozen, our savings split down the middle. Jessica's credit cards, which were linked to my accounts, were canceled. I drove home and spent the afternoon changing locks, updating passwords, and securing anything of value. Jessica's personal items went into boxes in the garage. Her car keys went into my safe. At 6 p.m., I called a locksmith to install a new security system. At 7 p.m., I called my insurance company to remove Jessica from my policies. At 8 p.m., I opened a bottle of the good bourbon from my basement collection and toasted my newfound freedom. Jessica was due back Sunday night. I couldn't wait to see her face when she tried to get into the house she no longer had access to. My phone had been buzzing with calls and texts from her all day. I ignored them all except for one, which I answered on the 4th ring. "Ben, thank God. I've been trying to reach you all day. I've been busy. How's Miami?" I came home early. I'm at the airport. "Ben, we need to talk about what happened." "There's nothing to talk about, Jess. You made your choice." "It's not that simple. You don't understand what's been happening between us." "I understand perfectly. You've been screwing Ethan Cole behind my back, probably for months. You lied about the girl's trip, you lied about working late, and you've probably been lying about a lot of other things, too. Ben, please, save it. I'll see you when you get home. Or rather, when you try to get home. I hung up and poured another bourbon. In 2 hours, Jessica would discover that her key no longer worked, her garage door opener had been reprogrammed, and her husband was no longer the pushover she thought she'd married. The real fun was just beginning. Jessica's taxi pulled into our driveway at 10:47 p.m. I watched from the living room window as she paid the driver and dragged her suitcase up the front walk, her phone pressed to her ear. Probably calling Ethan to tell him about her mean husband who'd ruined their romantic getaway. She tried her key first, jiggling it in the lock with increasing frustration. Then she tried the garage door opener, clicking it repeatedly as if the batteries had suddenly died. Finally, she rang the doorbell. I let her ring it 6 times before I opened the door. Ben? What the hell? My key doesn't work. That's because I changed the locks. I stayed in the doorway, not inviting her in. You don't live here anymore. What do you mean I don't live here anymore? This is my house, too. Actually, it's not. Check the deed. The house is in my name only, purchased with my money, secured by my credit. You're just a resident, or rather, you were. Jessica's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, and finally anger. You can't just lock me out of my own home. I can, and I did. Connecticut is a no-fault divorce state, but adultery still matters when it comes to property division. You might want to call a lawyer. Oh, wait, you can't afford one now that your credit cards are canceled? You canceled my credit cards? They were linked to my accounts you no longer have access to. I pulled out my phone and showed her the banking app. Funny thing about joint accounts, Jess. Either party can freeze them at any time. I froze yours about 6 hours ago. Jessica stared at the screen, her mouth hanging open. Ben, you can't do this. I need money. I need clothes. You need to call Ethan. I'm sure he'll be happy to put you up in his downtown loft. You two seemed pretty cozy in Miami. This is insane. You're acting like a crazy person. I laughed. Crazy? Jessica, I'm a lawyer. Everything I've done is completely legal. You want crazy? Crazy would be if I'd done something impulsive, like confronted you in that hotel restaurant in front of a dozen witnesses. Oh, wait, I already did that. Jessica's face crumpled. Ben, please. I know I made a mistake, but we can work through this. I love you. You love me so much you've been screwing another man for months. That's a funny way of showing it. It wasn't months. It was just a few times. And it didn't mean anything. I pulled out my phone again and scrolled through her Instagram posts from the past 6 months. Let's see. There was the work conference in Boston where you posted a photo with someone's masculine hand on your shoulder. The girls' night out where you checked in at that expensive steakhouse downtown that Ethan loves. The family emergency weekend when you were supposedly visiting your sister in New York, but your location services showed you at a resort in the Berkshires. Jessica's face went white. You were tracking me. I was paying attention. Something you might have tried occasionally. I stepped back and started to close the door. You can get your clothes tomorrow. I'll have them packed and waiting on the porch. Ben, wait, where am I supposed to go tonight? That's not my problem anymore. But I hear the Holiday Inn has reasonable rates. Of course, you'll need cash since your cards don't work. I closed the door and turned the lock. Jessica pounded on it for about 5 minutes, alternating between tears and threats. Finally, I heard her dragging her suitcase down the driveway. Through the window, I watched her make a phone call. Probably Ethan. The conversation looked heated, with Jessica gesturing angrily at the house. After 10 minutes, she hung up and called another number. Then another. It took 4 calls before someone agreed to come get her. A car I didn't recognize pulled up 20 minutes later, and Jessica climbed in with her suitcase. I poured another bourbon and called David. How did it go? He asked. Like clockwork. She's officially homeless. Ben, are you sure about this approach? The courts don't usually look favorably on spouses who lock each other out. The courts also don't look favorably on adultery. Besides, I'm not preventing her from getting her personal belongings. I'm just exercising my right to control access to my own property. If you say so, I've got some information for you, by the way. That credit check on Jessica turned up some interesting things. I'm listening. She's got 3 credit cards you don't know about, all maxed out, total debt around $40,000. And there's a personal loan for $15,000 that she took out 2 months ago. I sat up straighter. $15,000? What for? The application lists it as home improvements, but the money went straight into her personal checking account, the account you don't have access to. Son of a jerk. She's been planning this for months. Looks like it. There's more. She's been making payments to a private investigator for the past 3 months. My blood went cold. A PI? For what? I don't know yet, but I'm working on it. Ben, you need to be careful. If Jessica's been building a case against you, she might have information you don't expect. After I hung up, I sat in my living room trying to piece together the timeline. The affair with Ethan, the secret debt, the private investigator. Jessica hadn't just been cheating on me, she'd been planning to destroy me. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated her opponent. I spent the next hour going through our joint files, looking for anything else I might have missed. In Jessica's desk drawer, I found receipts for expensive dinners I hadn't attended, hotel stays during times when she'd claimed to be working late, and shopping receipts for lingerie I'd never seen her wear. At the bottom of the drawer was a business card for a divorce attorney in Hartford, the same attorney who'd represented Ethan's second wife in their divorce. I took photos of everything, then put the receipts back exactly where I'd found them. Evidence was only useful if the other side didn't know you had it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "This isn't over, Ben. You have no idea what you're dealing with," I replied. "Looking forward to finding out. Give my regards to Ethan." The response came immediately. "Forget you." I smiled and saved the screenshot. Jessica's vocabulary always got creative when she was cornered. The next morning, I packed Jessica's clothes into garbage bags and left them on the front porch as promised. I also installed a security camera to record her picking them up, just in case she decided to claim I'd damaged anything. She arrived at 10 a.m. with Ethan, driving his classic Mustang. They loaded the bags into his car while having what looked like a tense conversation. Jessica kept pointing at the house and shaking her head, while Ethan checked his watch repeatedly like he had somewhere else to be. The camera picked up audio, too. "This is humiliating," Jessica was saying. "My clothes are in garbage bags on the porch like I'm some kind of vagrant." "At least you got your stuff back," Ethan replied. "Look, babe, maybe you should stay with Kimberly for a few days while this blows over." Blows over? Ethan, he froze my bank accounts. He changed the locks. This isn't going to blow over. "Well, you can't stay at my place indefinitely. I've got business to think about." Jessica stopped loading bags and stared at him. "Business to think about? What about us? What about what we talked about in Miami?" Ethan glanced around nervously. "Keep your voice down. The whole neighborhood doesn't need to hear this." "Answer me, Ethan. Are we still doing this or not?" "Doing what? Jessica, you're still married. You're in the middle of a messy divorce. This isn't exactly the best time for me to be making long-term plans." The look on Jessica's face was priceless. The realization that her knight in shining armor was already looking for the exit was written in every line of her expression. "So that's it? You get what you want, and then you dump me when things get complicated?" "Nobody's dumping anybody. I'm just saying we need to be realistic about the situation." Jessica threw the last garbage bag into his car with enough force to dent the trunk. "Take me to Kimberly's." They drove off without another word, but I could see Jessica crying through the passenger window. I uploaded the security footage to my cloud storage and sent a copy to David. Then I called the private investigator I used for difficult cases. "Mark, it's Ben Harper. I need you to do some digging for me." "What kind of digging?" "The kind that involves my wife, her boyfriend, and the PI she hired to investigate me. I want to know everything." "How deep do you want me to go?" I thought about Jessica's tears, Ethan's obvious reluctance to commit, and the $40,000 in secret debt. "All the way to the bottom." Mark Watson called me back 3 days later with information that made my blood pressure spike. "Your wife's been busy," he said, settling into the chair across from my desk at the law firm. "The PI she hired is Tommy Rodriguez, works mostly divorce cases and insurance fraud. He's been following you for 3 months." "Following me where?" "Everywhere. Your office, the gym, that bar you go to with your law school buddies. He's got photos, video, even audio recordings from when you eat lunch at outdoor restaurants." I leaned back in my chair. "Looking for what?" "Anything that would make you look bad in a divorce. Affairs, drinking problems, financial irregularities, the usual stuff cheating spouses try to dig up when they want to flip the script." "Did he find anything?" Mark grinned. "You're disappointingly clean, Ben. No affairs, no gambling, no secret addictions. The worst thing he documented was you having 3 beers at Murphy's Pub last Friday." "What about the money? David found out Jessica took out a $15,000 loan." "That's where it gets interesting." Mark pulled out a folder thick with documents. "The loan money didn't go to the PI. Rodriguez was paid from her personal account, the one funded by her salary. The loan money went somewhere else entirely." He handed me a bank statement. Jessica's secret checking account showed the $15,000 deposit, followed by a series of withdrawals to something called Sunrise Investment Properties. What's Sunrise Investment Properties? It's a shell company owned by Ethan Cole. He uses it to flip houses and develop commercial properties. Your wife invested $15,000 in one of his projects 2 months ago. The pieces clicked into place. She wasn't just having an affair. She was planning to leave me for him, and she wanted to make sure she had money waiting when she did. Gets better, Mark continued. I did some digging into Cole's finances. The man's leveraged up to his eyeballs. His construction business is 3 months behind on supplier payments. He owes back taxes to the IRS, and the bank is threatening to foreclose on his downtown loft. So he's broke. Worse than broke. He's facing bankruptcy unless he can find a cash infusion soon. A cash infusion like, say, half of a successful lawyer's assets in a divorce settlement. I stared at the documents, feeling pieces of a puzzle I hadn't known existed falling into place. Jessica wasn't just cheating on me, she was helping him set up a con. That's my read on it. Cole seduces married women, convinces them to invest in his projects, then helps them divorce their husbands for maximum payout. He's done it twice before. His previous wives. Bingo! Wife number 1 invested $20,000 in Sunrise Properties 6 months before she filed for divorce. Wife number 2 put in $30,000. Both times, Cole managed to lose their investments in failed projects right around the time the divorce settlements were finalized. I felt sick, not because Jessica had cheated on me, but because she'd been stupid enough to fall for such an obvious scam. Does she know about his financial situation? I doubt it. Cole's good at keeping up appearances. The Mustang is leased, the loft is mortgaged to the hilt, and those expensive dinners he's been taking her to are all paid for with credit cards that are nearly maxed out. What about the private investigator? What was Rodriguez supposed to find? Mark flipped through more papers. Jessica hired him to document evidence of mental cruelty, emotional abuse, anything that would support a claim for a larger share of marital assets. She also wanted him to look for hidden accounts, or assets you might be concealing. Mental cruelty? According to Rodriguez's notes, Jessica claimed you were controlling, manipulative, and emotionally distant. She said you monitored her activities, questioned her friendships, and made her feel like a prisoner in her own home. I laughed bitterly. I never questioned anything. I trusted her completely. That's the irony. Rodriguez's surveillance actually proves the opposite of what Jessica claimed. His reports show you as a devoted husband who worked long hours to provide for his wife, never strayed, and gave her complete freedom to come and go as she pleased. So the PI she hired to frame me actually exonerated me. Better than that, he documented her affair with Cole, including photos of them together at restaurants, hotels, and his loft. Jessica was paying someone to gather evidence of her own adultery. I shook my head in amazement. She's not just a cheater, she's an incompetent cheater. There's one more thing, Mark said, pulling out a final document. Rodriguez kept detailed records of his conversations with Jessica, including one where she discussed the possibility of having you declared mentally unfit. My blood went cold. Mentally unfit? She wanted to know if emotional instability or erratic behavior could be grounds for having someone committed for psychiatric evaluation. Rodriguez told her it wasn't that simple, but she kept pushing the idea. She wanted to have me committed? It gets worse. She also asked about life insurance policies and whether mental health issues could affect their validity. I stared at Mark, trying to process what he was telling me. She was planning to have me declared insane, and then what? Collect on my life insurance? I don't think she thought it through that far, but the intent is clear from Rodriguez's notes. She wanted you out of the picture permanently, not just divorced. I stood up and walked to the window overlooking downtown Hartford. Jessica wasn't just an unfaithful wife, she was dangerous. And she was working with a con man who'd already destroyed 2 previous marriages for profit. Mark, I need you to do something else for me. Name it. I want you to approach Rodriguez. Tell him you're working for me now, and that I'm willing to pay twice what Jessica was paying for copies of everything he collected. You want to buy your wife's evidence against you? I want to buy evidence of her conspiracy to defraud me. There's a difference. Mark grinned. This is going to be fun. After he left, I sat in my office reviewing everything I'd learned. Jessica and Ethan had been planning this for months, possibly from the beginning of their affair. The private investigator, the secret loan, the investment in Ethan's company. It was all part of a scheme to maximize what she could take from me in a divorce. But they'd made several crucial mistakes. They'd underestimated my intelligence, overestimated their own cleverness, and left a paper trail that would destroy them both in court. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica. Ben, we need to talk. I have information you need to hear. I replied. I'm listening. Not over text. Meet me at Murphy's Pub tonight at 8. Why Murphy's? Because it's public and neutral, and because I know you'll feel comfortable there. I agreed to meet her, then called David to let him know what was happening. Be careful, he warned. If she's as desperate as you think, there's no telling what she might do. Don't worry, I'll be recording everything. That evening, I arrived at Murphy's pub 15 minutes early and chose a corner booth with a clear view of the entrance. I activated the recording app on my phone and waited. Jessica walked in at exactly 8 p.m., looking tired and stressed. She'd lost weight in the past week, and her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She spotted me and walked over, sliding into the booth across from me. Thank you for coming, she said. Talk? She took a deep breath. Ben, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but there are things you don't know about Ethan, and I think you need to hear them. I'm listening. He's not who I thought he was. The things he told me about his previous marriages, about his business, about his feelings for me, it was all lies. I kept my expression neutral. What kind of lies? He's broke, Ben. Completely broke. The loft, the car, the expensive dinners. It's all fake. He owes money to everyone, and he's about to lose everything. And you know this how? Jessica looked down at her hands. Because he asked me to loan him money. A lot of money. He said if I could get a good settlement from our divorce, we could use it to save his business and start fresh together. How much money? $200,000. I whistled softly. That's a lot of faith in a divorce settlement. That's what I thought, so I started asking questions, and I found out about his previous wives, about how he'd done this before. Jessica looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Ben, I think he was using me. I think this whole thing was a setup from the beginning. I leaned back in my chair. So what do you want from me, Jess? I want to call off the divorce. I want to come home. I want to try to fix what I broke. I studied her face, looking for signs of deception. She seemed genuinely distraught, genuinely regretful. She also seemed genuinely desperate. What about the private investigator you hired to frame me? Jessica's face went white. How did you know about that? I know about a lot of things, Jess. The question is whether you're going to be honest with me now, or if you're going to keep lying. She was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, I hired Rodriguez because Ethan convinced me you were hiding assets. He said all lawyers do it, and that I needed evidence to get my fair share. And the loan you took out? The money you invested in Ethan's company? He said it was a sure thing. He said we'd double our money in 6 months. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Jessica, do you have any idea how much trouble you're in? She shook her head. Conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted extortion, filing false claims in a divorce proceeding. Any one of those charges could send you to prison. Prison? Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. Unless, of course, you were willing to cooperate with the authorities. Help them build a case against Ethan for his previous cons. Jessica stared at me across the table. You want me to testify against Ethan? I want you to tell the truth. For once in your life, I want you to tell the complete, unvarnished truth about everything that happened between you two. And if I do that, you'll take me back? I looked at my wife, my soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt nothing but pity. She'd thrown away 6 years of marriage for a con man who'd been planning to rob her blind. She'd hired a private investigator to frame me for crimes I hadn't committed. She'd discussed having me declared mentally unfit and possibly worse. But she was also the woman I'd once loved enough to marry. The woman who'd shared my bed and my dreams and my hopes for the future. No, Jessica, I won't take you back, but I might be willing to let you walk away from this without going to prison. The tears started then, streaming down her face as the full weight of her situation finally hit her. I'm sorry, Ben. I'm so sorry for all of it. I know you are. The question is whether you're sorry enough to do the right thing? Jessica agreed to cooperate, but I didn't trust her. Trust was a luxury I could no longer afford where my wife was concerned. Instead, I set up a trap that would give me everything I needed to destroy both her and Ethan, while protecting myself from any future schemes. The plan was simple. Jessica would tell Ethan she'd convinced me to reconcile, and that I was willing to pay him $50,000 to disappear from our lives permanently. The catch was that Ethan would have to admit on recording to his role in the conspiracy. He'll never go for it, Jessica said when I explained the plan. We were sitting in my lawyer's office with David taking notes and a court reporter documenting everything Jessica said. He will, if he's desperate enough, I replied. And according to my sources, he's very desperate. Jessica looked terrible. She'd been staying with Kimberly for a week, sleeping on a couch and living out of garbage bags. Kimberly had made it clear the arrangement was temporary, and Jessica's other friends had been mysteriously unavailable when she'd called asking for help. What happens to me after this is over? Jessica asked. That depends on how convincing you are, David said. If Ethan takes the bait and we get a full confession, the district attorney might be willing to consider a plea bargain, probation instead of prison time. And the divorce? I answered that one. You'll get nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, nothing. You'll sign a document admitting to adultery and conspiracy to commit fraud, and you'll be grateful I don't sue you for the money you stole from me. Jessica winced at the word stole, but she didn't argue. She was finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her situation. When do you want to do this? She asked. Tonight. Call Ethan and tell him you need to see him urgently. Tell him you've got good news about the divorce settlement. That evening, Jessica called Ethan from my office while Mark and I listened on a speakerphone. I was recording everything, naturally. Ethan, it's me. I need to see you tonight. Jessica, I told you I needed some space to think. This whole situation with your husband has gotten out of hand. That's what I'm calling about. I talked to Ben today, and I think we can work something out. A pause. What kind of something? He's willing to pay you to go away, $50,000 cash, if you'll sign a document promising to never contact me again. $50,000. Ethan's voice perked up with interest. Why would he do that? Because he wants me back, and he knows I won't come back as long as you're in the picture. He'd rather pay you off than go through a messy divorce. And you're okay with this? Jessica glanced at me, then said, I love you, Ethan, but I can't live like this. I can't sleep on my friend's couch forever, and I can't survive without money. Ben's offering me a second chance, and I think I have to take it. What about us? What about everything we planned? What did we plan, exactly? You won't let me stay at your place, you're broke, and you keep talking about needing space. This doesn't feel like a relationship, Ethan. It feels like I'm just another one of your marks. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. Finally, Ethan said, Where do you want to meet? The Marriott downtown, room 412. I'll have the money and the papers. How do I know this isn't some kind of setup? Because I'm the one who's going to be there, not Ben. He doesn't want to see you ever again. He just wants you gone. Another pause. Fine, I'll be there at 9. After Jessica hung up, Mark grinned at me. Think he'll show? Oh, he'll show. $50,000 is probably more cash than he's seen in months. We had 2 hours to set up the hotel room. Mark positioned hidden cameras in 3 locations, tested the audio equipment, and briefed Jessica on exactly what she needed to say to get Ethan to confess. Remember, I told her, you need him to admit that this was all planned from the beginning, that he targeted you specifically because you were married to a successful lawyer, that he convinced you to hire the private investigator and take out the loan. What if he won't admit to any of that? Then you're going to prison, and he's going to walk away free. Your choice. At 8:45 p.m., Jessica took her position in the hotel room. Mark and I watched from the adjoining room, monitoring the video feeds and audio equipment. Ethan arrived 10 minutes late, looking nervous and checking the hallway before entering the room. Where's the money? He asked without preamble. Jessica gestured to a briefcase on the bed. It's all there. $50,000, just like I promised. Ethan opened the briefcase and stared at the stacks of bills inside. They were real. I'd withdrawn the money from my business account that afternoon. If everything went according to plan, I'd be getting it back as evidence. And the papers? Jessica handed him a document. Just sign at the bottom. It says you agree never to contact me again, and that any relationship between us is permanently over. Ethan read through the document quickly, then looked at Jessica. This seems too easy. Easy? Ethan, I'm giving up the man I love for $50,000 and a husband who might never trust me again. Nothing about this is easy. You really love me? You know I do, but love doesn't pay the bills, and it doesn't give me a place to live. Ethan sat down on the bed next to the briefcase. What if I told you there was another way? What if I told you we could still make this work? How? You're broke, I'm broke, and Ben will never give me a settlement if he thinks we're still together. We could take the $50,000 and disappear, go somewhere your husband can't find us. Jessica shook her head. $50,000 won't last forever. And then what? We'd be fugitives. We'd be free. Free to do what? Run the same con on someone else? Ethan's expression hardened. What's that supposed to mean? Come on, Ethan, I'm not stupid. I know about your previous wives, about how you convinced them to invest in your company right before they got divorced. That was different. How was it different? Ethan stood up and started pacing. Those women were unhappy in their marriages anyway. I just helped them see what they really wanted. And what they really wanted was to give you their money. They wanted to be with me. The money was just a way to make that possible. Jessica leaned forward. So this whole thing with me, it was planned from the beginning? Ethan stopped pacing and looked at her. What do you think? You think I just happened to meet you at that networking event? You think it was a coincidence that I kept running into you at restaurants and bars? You were following me? I was getting to know your routine. I spent 2 months learning everything about you and your husband before I made my move. In the adjoining room, Mark and I exchanged glances. Ethan was giving us everything we needed. Why me? Jessica asked. Why not someone else? Because your husband is successful, but not wealthy enough to be suspicious of gold diggers. Because you were unhappy, but not unhappy enough to leave on your own. Because you were naive enough to believe that a man like me could actually fall in love with a woman like you. The cruelty in his voice was breathtaking. Jessica flinched as if he'd slapped her. A woman like me? A suburban housewife with a boring job and a boring life. You think you're the first married woman I've seduced? Jessica, you're not even in the top 10? Then why are you here? Why are you willing to sign these papers? Ethan picked up the briefcase and snapped it shut. Because $50,000 is $50,000, and frankly, you've served your purpose. The divorce is taking too long, your husband is more clever than I expected, and you're becoming a liability. A liability? You hired that private investigator without consulting me. You took out a loan that created a paper trail. You invested money in my company under your real name instead of using a shell corporation like I told you to. Every move you've made has been sloppy and traceable. Jessica's face was pale. I was trying to help. You were trying to play in a game you don't understand. This isn't some romance novel, Jessica. This is business, and you're bad for business. Ethan signed the document with a flourish, then headed for the door. Thanks for the money, and thanks for being so predictably stupid. He left without looking back, carrying the briefcase full of money that would soon be evidence in his criminal trial. Jessica sat on the bed, staring at the closed door. After a moment, she started to cry. Mark and I entered from the adjoining room. You did good, I told her. We got everything we needed. He never loved me, did he? Jessica asked through her tears. No. But then again, you never loved me either. You just thought you did until something more exciting came along. Jessica looked up at me. I did love you, Ben. I still do. No, you don't. You love the idea of security, of not having to face the consequences of your actions. But that's not the same thing as love. I picked up the document Ethan had signed and handed it to Mark. Make sure the DA gets a copy of this along with the recordings. I want charges filed by tomorrow morning. What about Jessica? I looked at my wife, sitting on the bed in a hotel room, crying over a man who'd just told her she wasn't even in his top 10 conquests. Jessica will testify against Ethan in exchange for probation. Won't you, Jess? She nodded without looking up. Good. Then our business is almost finished. The next morning, Ethan Cole was arrested at his downtown loft on charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, and racketeering. The $50,000 in cash was found in his possession, along with documents outlining his previous cons and a list of potential future targets. I watched the arrest from across the street, sipping coffee from a paper cup and feeling a satisfaction I hadn't experienced since my first courtroom victory. Mark stood beside me, reviewing his notes. The DA says they've got enough evidence to put him away for 10 to 15 years, maybe more if his previous victims decide to press charges. They will, I said. Women don't like finding out they were marks in a con game. My phone buzzed with a call from David. Ben, you need to get down to the courthouse. Jessica's attorney is here, and they want to finalize the divorce settlement. I'll be right there. At the courthouse, Jessica sat beside a public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She'd signed a full confession detailing her role in Ethan's conspiracy, admitting to adultery, and waiving all claims to marital property. Mrs. Harper, the judge said, reviewing the documents, do you understand that by signing this agreement, you're giving up any right to alimony, property division, or spousal support? Yes, Your Honor. And you're doing this voluntarily, without coercion? Jessica glanced at me, then back at the judge. Yes, Your Honor. Very well, the divorce is granted, effective immediately. Just like that, 6 years of marriage were officially over. Outside the courthouse, Jessica approached me one last time. Ben, I know you'll probably never forgive me, but I want you to know that I am sorry. For all of it. I know you are, Jess. But sorry doesn't undo the damage. What happens to me now? You testify against Ethan when his case goes to trial. You complete your probation. You try to rebuild your life without destroying anyone else's in the process. Jessica nodded. Will you ever be able to think of me without hating me? I considered the question. I don't hate you, Jessica. I pity you. You had a good life, a husband who loved you, and a future full of possibilities. You threw it all away for a con man who saw you as nothing more than a paycheck. I know. Do you? Do you really understand what you lost? Jessica looked at me with tears in her eyes. I lost you. No. You lost yourself. The woman I married wouldn't have done any of this. She wouldn't have cheated, wouldn't have lied, wouldn't have conspired to frame her husband for crimes he didn't commit. That woman is gone, and I don't think she's coming back. I walked away, leaving Jessica standing on the courthouse steps. That evening, I sat in my living room in my house, with my bourbon and my books and my hard-won peace of mind. I called my parents to tell them about the divorce, called my brother to cancel the dinner plans Jessica and I had made for the following weekend, and called my secretary to update my emergency contacts. Then I poured myself a generous glass of the good bourbon and raised it in a toast to my empty house. To new beginnings, I said aloud, and to getting what we deserve. 3 months later, Ethan Cole was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. His previous victims testified about similar cons going back nearly a decade, and the judge showed no mercy. Jessica completed her community service and started working as a receptionist at a medical clinic. She moved into a studio apartment across town and kept her head down, avoiding the social circles where she might run into people who knew about her scandal. I sold the house and bought a downtown condo with a view of the river. I joined a new gym, started dating a prosecutor from the DA's office, and took a vacation to Italy, something Jessica had always said she wanted to do but never got around to planning. The prosecutor's name was Sarah Chen, and she was everything Jessica wasn't: honest, direct, and completely uninterested in playing games. We'd been seeing each other for 2 months when she asked about my marriage. Do you miss being married? She asked over dinner at an Italian restaurant I'd discovered during my solo vacation. I miss the idea of being married, I replied. I miss having someone to share experiences with, someone to plan a future with, but I don't miss the lying, the manipulation, or the constant wondering what was real and what was performance. Do you think you'll ever trust anyone enough to try again? I looked across the table at Sarah, with her intelligent eyes and her honest smile, and realized that I already was trying again. Ask me in 6 months, I said. She laughed. Fair enough. A year later, I ran into Jessica at the grocery store. She looked older, tired, but somehow more genuine than she had during our marriage. The artificial polish was gone, replaced by something that might have been authenticity. Ben, she said, clearly surprised to see me. Jessica, how are you doing? I'm okay. Working, staying out of trouble. You? I'm well. Getting married again, actually. Something flickered across her face. Not jealousy exactly, but a kind of wistful sadness. That's wonderful. I'm happy for you. Are you? She considered the question. Yes, I think I am. You deserve to be happy. You deserved better than what I gave you. We both deserved better than what we had. Jessica nodded. I've been going to therapy, trying to figure out how I became the kind of person who could do what I did. Any insights? Some. Mostly that I was so afraid of being ordinary that I convinced myself I deserved something extraordinary, even if I had to lie and cheat to get it. And now? Now I'm learning to be okay with ordinary. It's actually not so bad. We parted ways in the parking lot, and I realized I felt nothing but mild sympathy for the woman who'd once been my wife. The anger was gone, the hurt had faded, and what remained was simply the recognition that we'd both learned something valuable from our disaster of a marriage. Jessica had learned that extraordinary wasn't worth the price she'd paid for it, and I'd learned that trust, once broken, could be rebuilt, just not with the person who'd broken it. 6 months later, Sarah and I were married in a small ceremony attended by our families and closest friends. David was my best man, and he gave a toast that made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. To Ben and Sarah, he said, raising his glass, may your marriage be everything your first one wasn't, and may you never forget that the best revenge against those who've wronged you is living well. I looked around the room at the faces of people who genuinely cared about me, at the woman who'd chosen to build a life with me based on honesty and mutual respect, and at the future we were creating together. Jessica had been right about one thing. I did deserve something extraordinary. I just hadn't found it with her. As Sarah and I danced to our wedding song, I caught sight of my reflection in the window overlooking the garden where we'd exchanged vows. I looked happy, genuinely happy, in a way I hadn't been for years. The man in that reflection had survived betrayal, conspiracy, and the complete destruction of everything he'd thought he wanted. He'd fought back with intelligence instead of emotion, with patience instead of rage, and with the law instead of violence. He'd won. And more importantly, he'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even with those who've wronged you. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let them destroy your capacity for happiness. Jessica had tried to strip me clean of my money, my reputation, my sanity, and my freedom. Instead, she'd stripped away everything that wasn't essential, leaving me with a clearer understanding of what actually mattered. Trust, honesty, genuine connection, the kind of love that builds rather than destroys. As the song ended and Sarah smiled up at me, I realized that Jessica had given me an unexpected gift. She'd shown me exactly what I didn't want in a marriage, which had made it possible to recognize what I did want when I found it. The last I heard, Ethan was serving his sentence in a federal prison in upstate New York. Jessica had moved to another state and was working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. She'd never remarried, never had children, and according to the mutual acquaintances who occasionally mentioned her, she'd never gotten involved with another married man. Some lessons apparently stick. I never saw either of them again, and I was grateful for that. They belonged to a chapter of my life that was finished, a story that had ended exactly as it should have, with justice served, truth revealed, and the innocent party free to build something better. Sarah squeezed my hand as we left the dance floor, and I squeezed back, thinking about the house we'd bought together, the honeymoon we'd planned, and the decades of honest partnership stretching out ahead of us. Jessica had wanted to strip me clean. Instead, she'd helped me strip away everything that didn't matter, leaving only what did, and what remained was more than enough.